welcome to another action-packed, exciting hour of the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Re-Watch-Along Project. This is podcasting the way it used to be and the way you like it. This show is a production of the Something Else Podcasting Network, and it is episode number 057 of Smoky Mountain Wrestling from February 27th, 1993, taped February 8th, 1993, at the Jellicoe High School in Jellicoe, Tennessee. My name is Arya, and welcome to the show. And of course, welcome back our co-host, Trae.
I was gonna make a reference to the way it used to be and the way you like it, and now I've got nothing.
Yes, it's literally my intro to every week's show.
This is only my second week.
Yes. But of course, I mean, you've listened to the first 56 episodes, right?
I'm gonna say I did to protect your feelings.
I appreciate that. Now, in case you're like Trae and this is your first or second time listening to this show, what we do, it is really quite simple. We watch every single episode of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, beginning with episode number 1 on February 1st, 1992. We go all the way to episode number 200 on November 26th, 1995. We talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, the so-so, the okay, the tremendous, the okay, the out of this world, the unbelievable, the memorable, the unforgettable, the stuff you'll never forget, the stuff you already can't remember, the good, the bad, the ugly. We'll talk about some matches, we'll listen to some promos, we'll watch some angles, and ultimately, we'll have some fun for the next hour or so, going into the Wayback Machine and talking about some Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And then at the end of the show, I tell you what else is happening in the world of wrestling, because I can tell you February 27th, 1993 until I'm blue in the face, but sometimes you need to be told, hey, this also happened, to give you context as to what is going on in the world of wrestling at this time. And Trae, like I said the other day, you lasted 1 week and we're back for a second week. Were you excited watching these programs, knowing now that you have a little bit of context as to what's going on?
You know, I'm always excited to watch pro wrestling. I don't need any outside stimulation. Wrestling is all the stimulation I need.
There you go. Just make sure that your wife doesn't listen to the first half of the show and we'll be all good.
My wife doesn't listen to anything I do.
I can't even come up with a good response to that. I was gonna say good, but I'm like, it's probably not a good answer to that. I was like, oh, that sucks. I'm like, oh, is that really the best answer? Oh, well. Everything isn't for everyone. There you go.
It's good enough.
You know, I was talking to my brother about Willow the other day and how she looks, I'll just say it, she looks thicker on TV than she is in real life, because TV makes you look bigger than you really are. And my sister-in-law, who hates wrestling, asked who Willow was, and I said she's a wrestler and got the epic eye roll that, I would dare bring such a thing up. So, yeah, it is what it is.
Okay. So, just, even if you don't like wrestling, how can you not love Willow?
Willow is amazing, and I think Willow is one of those people that is like, the only people who don't love Willow are the people who don't know she exists.
And as we are recording this, about 24 hours ago, one half of one of the best women's matches to ever take place in the United States.
I will take your word for it, because I didn't watch Double or Nothing. I saw...
Some of it is worth watching. Most of it.
I saw that my most famous friend was the referee for the match, and she put it over on Instagram, but I mean, I wouldn't expect her, if it was a bad match, I wouldn't expect her to bury it. So,
it was legitimately a great match.
Love you, Aubrey, even though you're not listening to this. Anyway, now that I've name dropped, let's go to this week's show. Let's go to the intro with Coddle and Dutch, who are going to tell you everything we're going to talk about this week.
Welcome to another exciting, action-packed hour of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Wrestling the way it used to be and the way you like it. Hi, wrestling fans. I'm Bob Caudle, and we got a great hour in store for you this week. You're going to see right here, we're going to find out more about Kevin Sullivan's therapy. We're going to see Killer Kyle in action. Reno Riggins also will be here. Bob Armstrong, our commissioner, has another very important announcement. And as I said, we're going to find... What do you got there, Dutch?
Oh, nothing. Nothing you'd be interested in. Let me tell the people, Down and Dirty returns today to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and my special guest will be the Smoky Mountain Heavyweight Champion, the Dirty White Boy, with his advisor, the legendary Ron Wright. We're going to discuss in depth the incident that happened last week with Tracy Smothers. Everybody knows we have a new TV champion. His name is the Nightstalker. And as usual, we will draw out of a hat to see who the Nightstalker's opponent will be today. We put everybody's name in this hat.
Let me hold it.
I will draw it. Let me run my hand around in here.
All right.
And the name is Larry Santo. Larry Santo. Anyway, Larry Santo will oppose the Nightstalker today and beat the champ.
All right, fans, it's going to be a great hour. Stay right with us. Let's go to the ring.
Larry.
I know this isn't what I'm supposed to get out of this, but I just love wrestling, because only in wrestling can you say with a straight face that the name of your TV champion is the Nightstalker, and no one bats an eye. Nobody asks questions. It's like, oh yeah, the Nightstalker. He's the champion. Of course. Why wouldn't the Nightstalker be the champion? And we all just move on with our lives.
During our world class review this week, we talked about some of my compulsive behaviors. Another one is that I since I was a kid, I like to keep my own results and title histories. And my favorite thing is I just love reading the names because they're so ridiculous.
Yes. And it's like, at the end of the day, did Mr. and Mrs. Stalker have a child that they named Knight? Was Nightstalker their surname? Then they named him the? Since this isn't Mid-South, we don't have quotations around their name to notate whether it's a nickname or not. So this may be his shoot name.
Is Killer Kyle Killer Kelly's father, do you think?
Probably not. Because, it's the first name, but, I'm trying to think what other Kyles there are in wrestling. The only one I can think of is Mark Kyle, who is Killer Kyle. But Killer Kelly is actually related to Kelly Kelly. You may not know.
Really?
That. Yes, they're sisters.
I have no idea if you're fucking with me or not, so I'm just gonna.
I was gonna say, I hope you understand that I'm fucking with you. It's like Lance Storm, Tony Storm, and James Storm are not all related either.
Just breaking kayfabe left and right here.
I know, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that here. Although Lance Storm and Victoria / Tara are brother and sister.
That is a well-known established fact.
Yes. So today, in addition to us talking about the greatness of people's names, we're going to have more about Kevin Sullivan's therapy. Reno Riggins is here. Killer Kyle is here. And an important announcement from Bullet Bob Armstrong. And it's the return of Down and Dirty with Dutch with our Smoky Mountain champion, Dirty White Boy, because Down and Dirty can only have 3 guests, either Dirty White Boy, Jim Cornette, or Bullet Bob Armstrong. And since the other 2 are busy, it's Dirty White Boy's turn.
Honestly, who else would you ever need?
Tim Horner did cut that Mr. Warndorf promo a few weeks ago on Down and Dirty. I'm still... Oh my God, I did clip that. I should play it for you at the end of this show. Any respect you ever had for Tim Horner will go right out the window with this one.
Because I had so much respect for Tim Horner.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, we talk about off air, Tim Horner is your all-time favorite wrestler.
No. Not Carl Stern's favorite wrestler, though.
No. Carl Stern's favorite wrestler is Mr. Olympia. The one half.
But they were wearing matching green trunks on Mid-South this week.
Yes, which you could listen to yesterday or 5 minutes ago in real life. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah, by the way, I know I'm like 10 minutes into the show before saying this, but we're starting a TNA review Wednesdays, starting June 19th. So the world-class Mid-South show is moving to Tuesdays, starting June 18th. I'll remind you over and over and over and over and over and over and over again between now and then, but just letting you know, it's a thing. It's total nonstop Arya, even though it won't just be me. So with that out of the way, let's go to the ring here for our first match. Ted Ted Allen, who is not Magnum TA, versus Killer Kyle with Jim Cornette. Kyle didn't even bother taking off his suit jacket and tie this week, and he used so many backbreakers in this match that I'm convinced a young Roderick Strong saw this match and thought that it would make for a great gimmick. And Kyle won with the rub out. Now, Kyle, who has been a staple in this promotion since day one, has wrestled so few times on TV since September that it took me a minute to remember what the hell the name of his finish was, because they didn't say it on TV either. It's the rub out.
I'm glad you told me that because I wrote that it was halfway between a spine buster and an Alabama slam.
Yep. Not a bad, move at all, but
No. So very clear. The Heavenly Bodies are meant to be the new Midnight Express. Lowercase n New Midnight Express, not uppercase n New Midnight Express. Killer Kyle is supposed to be the new Big Bubba Rogers.
Oh yeah,
a
definitely.
big strong motherfucker wrestling in a suit. Destroyed poor Ted Allen here.
And
2 minutes 19 seconds.
And I will say that obviously Killer Kyle is not at the same skill level as Ray Traylor was, but
No.
I think Killer Kyle does a very good job, all things considered, as the bodyguard of Jim Cornette here. And
I had the thought, and then just I was prepared to not like this because I knew that Killer Kyle was not going to be as good as Ray Traylor, but he was perfectly fine here.
Definitely. And I did note they mentioned, I think Cottle said that he wonders what's in the violin case. And I'd like to point out that for those longtime listeners, like 6 months ago, he wrestled, I think it was Dixie Dynamite, and the stipulation was that if Dixie won, they'd have to reveal what's in the violin case. Dixie won, and it turned out to just be a roll of tape that Killer Kyle used to tie Dixie's arm to the rope and kick his ass. So, sometimes it's best to not ask. So
why
then
ask why?
Reno Riggins versus Rip Rogers. So it's double Rip Rogers week here on the Something Else Podcasting Network. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that Reno is still here since he was on last week's show and they were taped the same night. Dutch says Rip is from Seymour, Indiana, which is also the home of John Cougar Mellencamp, which is one of those trivia notes that, hey, it is what it is, right? They talk about all the confidence Reno got from his win over Dirty White Boy a few weeks ago, which I know you weren't here to watch it, but in this match, it was 6 minutes, and Dirty White Boy kicked his ass for 5 minutes and 58 seconds of it. White Boy won the match, and then lost on a reverse decision DQ when he kicked Reno in the dick.
That's funny.
Yeah, and apparently that was enough to give Reno Riggins confidence now.
Anytime I've been kicked in the dick, it never gave me any confidence.
I don't know if that says more about, Reno or says more about you. Because, maybe that's what you need to get more confidence. I'll message your wife, see if she can do anything about it. So let's see here. Rip had Reno on the apron and went up top, but Reno crotched him. But even this didn't lead to a comeback as Reno immediately got dropped with a DDT. Rip goes for a pile driver on the floor, which would have been a DQ, but Reno didn't want to win that way, so he backdropped out of it. And then he wins with a crossbody off the top. Now, this was not a good showing for Reno at all. And I note that I'm not sure how much non-jobber experience he has, because he was a jobber in the WWF for years, and he's been a jobber for months here before he's gotten this little bit of a push. But in my opinion, this was the time he needed to be more selfish. Instead, this match was more about Rip, and Reno eked out a win. And this was not Rip Rogers' day to get over. Rip Rogers can live to get over another day. This was supposed to be about him. And like I said, he wasn't selfish enough to do it.
I hope this isn't a controversial statement, but Reno Riggins, not as good as Tito Santana.
I'm happy I'm sitting down because, you would have knocked me over on that one.
The only other note I have is that when when Rip tried to pile drive Riggins on the gym floor and Riggins backdropped him, Caudle said he landed on his head. And Dutch said if he landed on his head, he's okay. If he landed on his back, he might be hurt.
I want to point, I really believe this Reno Riggins push is a rib on me, even though, again, it's, 30 plus years later, because when Reno was just doing jobs on this show, I noted that, of all the jobbers that we've seen on TV over the years, that Reno was one of those people that I thought was really talented, but never got a push. Because if you look at every other, talented jobber, even your Barry Horowitz's is got, at least something of a push, while Reno never really did. And literally, as soon as those words were out of my mouth, Reno was suddenly in a program. And we found out why he never got a push, because that guy can't talk, like, at all. However, that has never stopped
this on us.
Yes. However, that's never stopped us giving Tim Horner promo time. So, what the hell, Jim? If you're going to use this Wayback Machine, couldn't you keep this company in business? But, oh well. Anyway, so Bullet Bob is once again back from his tour of Japan, and he's still trying to figure out what to do with the heavenly bodies. And I'm not going to play it because we have a lot of stuff to play here this week. But at the end of the day, the big news is April 2nd in Pikeville, Kentucky, is the first annual Bluegrass Brawl. To be honest, and I mean, I'm not going to, spoil what the main event is right now, but I thought that this show was like in the next week or two, and it was weird that they hadn't brought it up yet. And so, nope, it is actually back here on April 2nd in Pikeville.
I have already made moves to acquire us a copy of the Bluegrass Brawl.
I actually thought you were going to say that, but I was kind of like, let's see. I'm going to look ahead to at least the shows like the next week, because usually they'll at least show us at least highlights of the show. So, not that there's anything wrong with watching a 2.5, 3 hour show and then, reviewing it. But, if it's, I guess we'll see. We'll figure things out. By the way, we get our local promo. By the way, did you have anything else about Bullet Bob's little promo here?
No.
Okay. We then go to our weekly therapy session with Kevin Sullivan and Dr. Phillips. And if it was anybody other than Kevin Sullivan, I would skip it because it's 3 minutes of our lives we'll never get back. But it's Kevin fucking Sullivan. And, it's one of those things, enjoy him while he's here, because I guess he's not in WCW for a year, but still, it's like, enjoy the good shit while it lasts kind of thing. So let's go to that right now.
As you heard last week and a few moments ago from Commissioner Bob Armstrong, due to an error by a staff member while Bob Armstrong was away, Smoky Mountain Wrestling is being forced to pay for Kevin Sullivan's psychiatric therapy. Sullivan is sending us videotape to keep us abreast of his progress. So right now, let's take a look at this.
Mr. Sullivan.
Yes, Dr. Phillips.
I'm glad you're here, and I'm very glad that Smoky Mountain Wrestling is paying my bill. And it's going to be a long session, many months.
Anything you say, Doctor.
I want you to tell me what these cards, these ink blots, represent to you.
This one looks like the Mongolian stomper burning in oil, and he's screaming his lungs out, "Save me, save me."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this one looks like the Rock and Roll Express joined together at birth, and Jimmy Cornette hacking them up with a chainsaw and separating them.
Mm-hmm, Mr. Sullivan. What's this one remind you of?
This one reminds me of Tim Horner sitting on a lily pad and a bunch of hunters with tripods stabbing him and stabbing him.
And this one?
Oh, this one reminds me of Tracy Smothers getting impaled on a rebel flag pole.
And this final one, Mr. Sullivan?
This one. This is a very interesting one. It looks like that baboon-like head of Brian Lee impaled on the golden spike.
Yeah, Mr. Sullivan. I think this is going to be a long session, many months. But right now, I think you need a cranium massage.
I love cranium massages, Doc. Anything you say.
Nurse Cratchit?
There's nothing like a good cranium massage. Doc, I want to ask you a question. What does this look like to you?
Looks like waterfalls and blue skies.
What does this one look like?
Looks like butterflies and trees.
Doc, you're right. I think this is going to be a long session. It's a good thing Smoky Mountain Wrestling is paying for all this. Thank you, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And thank you, Commissioner Bob Armstrong. I just love a cranium massage.
Oh, I'm sure he does, especially with a woman with a heaving bosom behind him giving it to him. Yeah.
Starting to think this doctor is a quack.
I mean, you know, if you and I could figure out a way to have regular therapy sessions 6 times a week and make a wrestling company pay the bill for it, you know, I think you and I could pull off a scam. What do you think?
Think they can get because I've been having some problems with my insurance. I wonder if I can get Rick Rubin or Jim Cornette to pay for my therapy bills.
That might explain why Smoky Mountain went out of business and why Rick Rubin pulled the funding. Because I mean, these therapy bills, you know, like even in 1983, I can't imagine an hour of therapy was inexpensive, and especially him going 6 times a week. You know, that's quite the bill. And
I do believe he needs it.
oh, definitely. And I gotta say, I did enjoy that all of his ink blots reminded him of baby faces being impaled, including, you know, Mongolian Stomper, who again I don't think we ever see him on TV again, although he does wrestle off and on for the company throughout the next 3 years. And actually no shows the last 4 shows, so maybe that's what killed the company. With Mongolian Stomper no showing the end.
I just can't believe that I took the time to write down all of those Rorschach things and then he just played the audio.
Yeah, spoiler alert, I play a lot of audio on these shows. It helped when I was by myself, so it's like it gave me 3 minutes to breathe. So we'll have to figure out the future of these little audio clips here, because, you know, now that I have you, I don't necessarily need to breathe.
Still need to breathe.
If you insist. So, Kevin Sullivan with the Nightstalker versus Len Fields. Now, breathing is important, but apparently winning matches isn't, because Kevin Sullivan hasn't won a single match on TV yet, and this is a continuation of that, because he loses again by kicking Len Fields' ass too much, and then he loses thanks to Trae's favorite finish, as we discussed yesterday. He threw Len Fields over the top rope for the disqualification.
Fucking hate that rule.
And
Kevin Sullivan killed this poor fucker, but Len Fields technically won the match.
yes, spoiler alert, there is a much more famous one-sided ass kicking involving Kevin Sullivan coming up very, very soon. I think the next TV taping features it. But
That's exciting.
Oh yeah, it makes the Brian Lee stabbing from November, you know, look like nothing. So
This was the second time on this show that Dutch said someone was making their first appearance who was on the show last week. Did it with Ted Allen and did it again with Len Fields here.
it's possible that, you know, these were taped out of order. I don't know that for a fact, but it's possible anyway.
It is possible.
But I mean, who knows? I still want to know who the hell Tommy Starr is, because Kevin Sullivan's talked about him now 2 weeks in a row. He did something to someone named Tommy Starr. Who's Tommy Starr? That may or may not be important. So March 21st in Knoxville, he has what is called, well, it's called two different things during this show, but it's a Russian revolver match, which I think is what the name is supposed to be, although Russian roulette also makes sense. It's basically spin the wheel, make the deal without the wheel. So there's going to be 6 potential matches, and somehow, some way, they're going to choose one of those matches for Kevin Sullivan to have with primetime Brian Lee on March 21st in Knoxville.
Think they're going to shoot in the Russian revolver match?
If I was a betting person, and I say this to somebody who lost $20 on the Kentucky Derby a few weeks ago, no. Especially since if they were to shoot, my prediction would be Kevin Sullivan, even with the 1 foot and 100-pound weight and height and weight advantage that primetime Brian Lee has.
Yeah, no, I'd take Kevin Sullivan.
And Nightstalker was screaming at Tim Horner, whose luck is running out, which sounds like a hell of a punishment for Horner after some of the shit we've seen him do, since the turn of the calendar. Now, before Down and Dirty with Dutch, they showed a 4-minute recap of last week's angle where Dirty White Boy cost Tracy the Beat the Champ TV title and then burned the Confederate flag. And as we've mentioned, and this is a disclaimer going into this promo, it's 1993, it's a Southern wrestling territory, and while we can't always promise that we're a politic-free zone, it's definitely one of those things that I don't know. I try to just say it is what it is because, again, it's 1993, it's the South, and it would probably still be a heated angle in 2024 in the South. Tracy Smothers is going to cut a promo where he is going to basically defend carrying the Confederate flag, and then we're going to go to Dirty White Boy, who in 2024 terms is going to be a babyface, but in 1993 terms is a heel. But let's go to that right now.
You folks all saw what happened last week when the Dirty White Boy beat the stew out of me. He cost me $5,000. He cost me the TV title. It's no secret that I've carried the rebel flag since I entered professional wrestling. A lot of people don't like the Confederate flag. I read in the newspaper that the state of Alabama and the state of Georgia don't even carry the flag in the capitals. I think there's a lot of good and bad in everything. I want to tell you what the Confederate flag means to me. To some folks, the rebel flag brings back a lot of bad memories. But to me, it brings back good memories. It reminds me of where I come from, where my father comes from, and his father before him, and his father before him. And some Northerners and folks from other parts of the country always try to make us look like a bunch of dumb backwoods hillbillies. But the fact of the matter is that we're proud of our home. We love our home, and we have pride. When I carried that rebel flag on TV, it was a message to those folks that knocked us that we're proud of where we're from, that we love where we're from. We're proud of the fact that you can still go to a store and folks will say hello to you, how you doing, that good old Southern hospitality. We're proud of the fact that we can leave the doors to our house unlocked and not lose everything we own. And if I ever have any kids, when they grow up, they'll be able to join a church and not some street gang. I would never, ever be any place on this earth than right here in the South. And Dirty White Boy, you tried to take that away from me. A lot of people come up to me and they said, Tracy, are you going to let that Dirty White Boy get away with burning your flag? Are you going to do anything about it? Yeah, I'm going to do something about it. Southern people will treat you just like you treat them. And Dirty White Boy, you got a bad treatment coming, son. You mess with the wrong man. That belt means as much to you as the rebel flag does to me. And I'm going to show every man, woman, and child out there, and especially you, Tony Anthony, Dirty White Boy, that you don't mess with the wild-eyed Southern boy.
Okay. Now, before we get to the Dirty White Boy's rebuttal to that, I will say this. Again, trying to ignore the political end of this, because that's just gonna, lead us down a crazy little path here. And of course, Trae, if you want to lead us down the political path, go right ahead. I'm going to try to avoid it. I will say that this was one hell of a fiery babyface promo, and he had a lot of intensity to it. And I will say that in a world where it's hard to take wrestling promos seriously, I did not doubt for one moment that Tracy Smothers was legitimately pissed off and he legitimately wanted his revenge on Dirty White Boy.
Very passionate promo. Give Tracy Smothers that. So the last time, this is the last time that I'm going to comment on the implications of this angle. If you would like to hear what a failed Civil War historian thought about the legacy of the Confederacy, I want you to go to YouTube and search for a Southern historian's lost cause, and you will see a TEDx talk that some fat loser did a few years ago about this.
Now, I've born and raised in the North, and while you're not, quote unquote, from the part of the South that you automatically think of when you think about the Confederate flag, this angle definitely is a lot different to me than it would be to you, because I'll be honest, I haven't met a single person up here who gives two rats' asses about the Confederate flag. But I imagine, again, even though you're in Texas, and when you think about the Confederate flag, you think more Alabama, Louisiana, Tennessee, that area. Do you think in 2024 that this could still be played out as an angle in a Southern territory, even where you are?
No. There would be certain people who still saw Tracy Smothers as the babyface, but they would be a minority. I think largely the tide has turned. I grew up in Arkansas, so that's like pretty deep in the pretty deep in but my Southern credentials are pretty unimpeachable, and it's not just the Southern thing to me. It's that I have some personal trauma about life goals and failures wrapped up in this, so that's I'll be glad when this angle is played out.
And don't want to spoil anything for you, but Tracy and Dirty White Boy are going to be linked together for most of the rest of the company's run. Not necessarily as opponents all the time, but this is not going to be the only time we see Tracy and DWB sharing the screen. I'll just say that. So obviously we're on the road to Tracy getting a Smoky Mountain title shot, and there is a famous story, and we'll get to that here as this angle plays out, that leads to a title change, whether planned or not. But Dirty White Boy, like I said last week, this angle, whether or not it's your favorite angle ever, especially in 2024, this angle is going to get legitimate heat for Dirty White Boy and Mr. Ron Wright. And with that, let's go back to Dutch, who is going to continue down and dirty with Dutch with Dirty White Boy and Mr. Ron Wright.
As you can see, it was a wild time last week here on Smoky Mountain Wrestling, but I want to know, Mr. Wright, obviously you and the White Boy have made an enemy out of Tracy Smothers, and the fans at home would just like to hear some of your comments.
Let me tell you something. I've never been so heartbroken and let down in my life. I made the South wrestling what it is. I'm the Southern living legend, and all of these people around here cheering for this no-good Tracy Smothers makes me shamed and disgusted of the South. Shut up over there.
Shut up and let him talk.
I tell you, I'm so disgusted with the South, the way they're backing that Smothers. Man, the White Boys are moving.
Let me tell you something. I don't care where you go or where you live, but I'm here to tell you boys that next week Tracy Smothers is going to get his shot at your title right here on TV, and I'm going to give him a whole lot of time. And on a personal note, I think you've caused more problems than you're worth, and we're going to get this settled.
Wait a minute. Did you hear that, Mr. Wright? Next week, the white boy...
I heard what he said. I'm not believing it the way they went down on us. I just can't believe it. We're going to move to New York City, and they can have the South. That's what they can do.
That's it. You just heard it right there. We're renouncing the South, and we're going to become Yankees because you bunch of redneck, tobacco-chewing, four-wheel driving, non-shooting, and that's just the women, Dutch. The men's even worse. Let me tell you something, Tracy Smothers. It's going to take a lot more than you and Bob Armstrong to get this title off the dirty white boy.
Well, there you heard it, fans. Very controversial words from a very controversial man. Don't go away. We got to pay some bills. We'll be back in 120 seconds.
I will never not love Mr. Ron Wright. He could get away with pretty much anything he wanted to say, at least for me.
I love Ron Wright. Honestly, if I ever get that time machine, the first thing I'm going to do is go back to East Tennessee in the late 60s and early 70s and watch Ron Wright and Whitey Caldwell. Ron Wright's the best.
Oh, definitely. And it's hilarious because he's in his early 50s here, but they're obviously playing him up as a lot older, having him in the wheelchair and all that fun stuff. And I just always laugh when I see that, he's not a whole lot older than I am right now.
People used to look way older than they do now. And my hypothesis is that nobody before the year 2000 drank water.
What is water?
My feelings about this angle notwithstanding, I really appreciated this from a heel work perspective, telling the people of Jellicoe, Tennessee that you're going to move to New York and become Yankees. Oh my God, the heat.
And there's something about the most Southern sounding person on the show, Dirty White Boy, saying that, he's renouncing the South. And he's now going to be a Northerner. It's hilarious. And, I kind of hinted at it, but spoiler, this is what leads to a lot of the heat that Dirty White Boy is going to legitimately have with certain Southern groups. And
was it a Southern group that Dick Murdoch might have been a member of?
I don't want to say yes for sure, but I know if it not, it was something very similar to it. Because I'll just say it. There was a house show, and it's coming up at some point. I could look in the record books and see when Tracy wins the title, because spoiler alert, in case it's not obvious, Tracy's going to win the title at some point. But there was some house show where somebody went up to Tracy, showed them some tattoos that basically showed how much they meant business, and said, "Don't worry, Tracy, if you don't take care of him tonight, we will." And whether or not that was actually supposed to be the night where Tracy won the title or not, Tracy won the title that night and saved Dirty White Boy's life. Because these are people who were not going to question that they would take out Dirty White Boy if Tracy Smothers didn't.
Wow.
So Larry Santo was out next. And now I've already seen the Nightstalker wrestle singles match and get the introduction before. But when you were watching this, I don't know how much ECW you watched back in the day, but when you first heard were you in the back of your mind thinking, wait, Taz is coming out?
I wrote whatever song Taz's ECW theme was a ripoff of was the song the Nightstalker came out to.
So Nightstalker, the Beat the Champ TV title, gets his first title defense here against Larry Santo. And there was some confusion here because, Nightstalker wins with a power bomb. I did note he threw a drop kick, which I was just not expecting. Brian Clark, the Nightstalker, Adam Bomb, whatever you want to call him, he is it's forgotten how agile of a big man he was. Because, other than some really good agility, he was not a whole lot in the ring. But, I'm always shocked anytime I see him doing something out of the ordinary for such a large man. Um,
Man, I don't know. Brian Clark certainly had his moments.
so the confusion came in because, last week when he beat Tracy Smothers for the title, he got $1,000. And they were confusing themselves and saying this was his second title defense, but it's not. It's his first title defense. He just won $1,000 last week and $1,000 this week. So we still got up to 4 more title defenses here of the Beat the Champ TV title. Up
Maybe
next,
things were taped out of order here.
it's possible. I think like it couldn't have been because at least the TV title match had to have been taped in the correct order because,
Yeah.
but up next we have further proof of why we need a keep Tim Horner to 20 seconds rule. As Tim Horner and Primetime Brian Lee are going to cut a promo. Let's go to poor Bob Caudle.
Lee and White Lightning Tim Horner.
All right, Dutch, and right you are. Primetime Brian Lee, White Lightning, Tim Horner. Tim?
You know something? I heard the Nightstalker come out here and say that I stuck my nose in his business. Well, if the truth be known, and I'll tell you what the truth is, Nightstalker, you stuck your nose in Primetime Brian Lee's business. I'm just being his friend because I'm going to make the odds even, 2 on 2. Now, we're looking for you, so don't have to worry about looking for us because we're looking for them. We're like a team. He's carrying the ball, and I'm going to be doing some blocking. I might knock you down, Stalker, but I'll clip them legs out from under you, and he'll get his shot with that Russian roulette.
I think you'd probably like a chance at that $1,000, too.
You know I
TV
would.
title,
You know
right?
I would.
All right.
You know, Bob, Tim, Kevin Sullivan, March 21st, you got this Russian roulette match. You talk about 6 chambers in a gun. What else can happen? 6 chambers in a gun, I don't care. Burn the ring down. Surround it with barbed wire, because I tell you what, I got one weapon. It's a .45 caliber right here, and I'm going to knock your little pea head off your body.
Primetime Brian Lee, White Lightning, Tim Horner. We'll be right.
So we've had 20-second Tim Horner promos in the past. And it's like, okay, he's not the greatest promo in the world, but keep the guy to 20 seconds. It's not as bad as it could be. Unfortunately, apparently, I'm the only person who wants that rule because they just keep giving Tim Horner more and more promo time. And after he gets past the 20-second mark, he starts stumbling over his words. At least we didn't get the jip jive and socializing crap that he normally spews. But yeah, this was Tim Horner being his Tim Horneriest best. Brian Lee then invited Kevin Sullivan to burn the ring down. Please don't do that, Kevin Sullivan. And yeah, this match is either a Russian revolver match or a Russian roulette match. Who knows? But, it's March 21st in Knoxville.
Tim Horner, I don't think he had a piece of the territory exactly, but he was involved in like a lot of the local promotion. It was kind of an integral part of the promotion here, so I think we're stuck with him forever. But
go on.
I'm into this Brian Lee Kevin Sullivan program.
It is great, and I mean, I know that we're now 4 months into it, but I would recommend checking out Sullivan's debut. And I know I've kind of alluded to it, but it's like, I think it's the first week in November because they spent like 3 months. In theory, this feud's been going on since August. They've been building up this Sullivan-Brian Lee feud, but it took 3 months before Sullivan even appeared on the show. And then it was one of the most graphic moments I literally have ever seen in televised wrestling. And that's saying something.
Yeah, I will at some point go back to the beginning and fill in the gaps when I can fit the time in. Maybe years from now, but I will eventually.
I will say that, outside of that angle, which again I strongly recommend going back and seeing that whole original beatdown, the first episode of 1993 is a best of 1992 edition, and it covers the best of 1992. Like, so you could literally just watch that and be all set.
That's helpful.
Now, here's one of the staples of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, especially the last few months. We've reached the end of the advertised action, and we're 36 minutes into the show. And when the Rock and Roll Express come out for the promo that I'm about to play, I'm sitting here like, okay, what else is left on the show? And I go back to my notes from the beginning of the show, and I'm like, okay, Killer Kyle wrestled, Reno Riggins wrestled, we heard from Bullet Bob, we had the therapy session with Kevin Sullivan. What the hell is left on the show? And nothing was scheduled for the rest of the show. So keeping in mind, if wrestling is a shoot, then what the hell was going to happen for the last 15 minutes? Now, thankfully, the Rock and Roll Express are here to help fill in some time. Let's go now to Ricky and Robert. More importantly, Ricky, because thankfully Robert knows what to do best, and that's to stand there and not talk.
Rock and Roll Express right here, Rick. Doesn't matter how it goes now. The Heavenly Bodies, the Studs, or whatever. You guys are outnumbered. It's like 3-2.
That's right, Bobby. I have two problems right now. It's two problems that's bothering me. You see, like every time we wrestle the Stud Stable or the Heavenly Bodies, it's always 3-on-2. Every time it's 3-on-2. And the second problem is, every time that we have the Heavenly Bodies beat, Jimmy Cornette pulls one of his old tricks. But you see, individually, one-on-one, we can beat either the Stud Stable or the Heavenly Bodies, and I'm out here telling you that right now. But you see one thing, Jimmy Cornette, we have signed some six-man tag team matches in Knoxville and Johnson City. But I'm going to tell you something, baby. I've got a mystery partner for you that hates you as much as the Rock and Roll Express does, and it's as devious and as mean as you are, Jimmy Cornette. So, baby, you get it ready, because in Knoxville and Johnson City, remember this, we have got a mystery partner, baby, and he's going to take care of business and take care of you, Cornette. But one thing, like I said, Bob, one-on-one, we can beat either one of the Heavenly Bodies or the Stud Stable. It don't matter to us.
That's right. That's like I said, boys. Y'all bring them down on one-on-one. We take care of anybody.
All right. Hey, can you tell us who the partner is, Rick?
No, Bob. I'm going to leave that a secret for you, Mr. Cornette. See you in Knoxville and Johnson City.
Okay. So I forgot that Robert actually spoke here, which is easy to do because, well, Ricky Morton is the promo guy of the two. So Trae, I'm going to ask you this, and I know I didn't warn you ahead of time not to do this, so you may have already done it, but did you look ahead to see who the mystery partner is?
I did.
Ah, damn. Well, I think we can just safely say that it was not a disappointment for a mystery partner. But that is coming up. When you saw it, were you surprised?
I knew that person had done a few shots in Smoky Mountain, so I was just like, oh, that was those shots that person did.
Okay, so, yeah, so Rock and Roll Express come out. Morton says he has two problems. The first is no matter who they wrestle, it's always 3-on-2, and when they have the Heavenly Bodies beat, Corny always interferes, and they've signed some six-man tags, and they have a partner who hates Cornette just as much as they do. And I don't doubt that, at least in a kayfabe storyline sense. But we make a challenge for a one-on-one match because, again, this show still has 14 minutes left to go. But, thanks to a decent length promo and a commercial in between, we now have 10 minutes to go. So Jim Cornette...
I'm sure that Commissioner Bob Armstrong had a standby match ready to go. I'm just sure of it.
I'm sure, Bullet Bob would never, just allow time to just go away. Now, of course, we have Jim Cornette coming out next, who, let's be honest, you could have given him the microphone 28 seconds into the show and just let him talk, and he'd still be going until the 50-minute and 58-second mark. But, so worst case scenario, we actually, when my former co-host and I briefly were also doing NWA Worldwide, there was one show that had like 8 minutes left on the show, and Dusty Rhodes came out for a promo, and he took up the entire 8 minutes. And I couldn't tell you anything it was about now. It's been a couple of years, but it's like, yeah, I could totally believe that Corny or certain people could just fill up the last 10 minutes of a show with a long promo.
Cornette did drop the line in here. You couldn't beat half of us with the other half helping you.
So he says, he mocks the idea that the Rock and Roll have a mystery partner. He says that they can't find anyone who can give the Heavenly Bodies a fight. The Rock and Roll storm the set and reiterate the challenge to a one-on-one match. Full of Bob storms out because, hey, we don't have to have a standby match when we can just have a regular good match. And he bans everyone else to the back. And by everyone else, we mean everyone who is an actual wrestler, because Jim Cornette is, for some reason, allowed to stay at ringside for the match.
He has a manager's license.
Yes, he does. And we get our actual match here, which is Bobby Eaton with Jim Cornette versus Ricky Morton. So, I mean, if you're going to, get Bob Eaton even for a few weeks, you might as well put him to use here. And go ahead.
These two have wrestled each other probably literally hundreds of times. In fact, I was trying to think of like people who wrestled each other the most, like in every configuration. Ricky Morton and Bobby Eaton would have to be somewhere on the list.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, unlike, like John Cena versus Randy Orton, and it's no offense to them, because I mean, they had really good chemistry of their own. It never got old watching Bobby Eaton and Ricky Morton wrestle. And I mean, they wrestled at this point from 84 to 93. Now, it wasn't consistent for 9 years, but they wrestled a lot in those 9 years. Yeah, this is one of those things where it's like, if you told me that this show was legitimately running 10 minutes short and Cornette was like scrambling in the back and just said, hey, you two go out there and have a singles match, and you told me that they went out there with zero preparation and just did this, I totally believe you.
Absolutely.
So I did note, and this is a weird thing to note, especially because, why would I be looking at this? The bottom of Ricky Morton's boot was really dirty. I don't know why that was so notable to me that I made sure to write it down, because when I looked, Bobby Eaton's boots were just as dirty, just, whatever. They did have one screwy spot here. Morton goes for a leapfrog, but he waits too long to make the jump, because while these two have wrestled 8 million times, I think this is the first time they've wrestled in like 3 years. So they were a little off early on, and Morton almost tripped while going up and over Eaton there. And it was a good match. Nothing, you need to go out of your way to see, but it was a fine match here at the main event. Morton made his comeback, hit a flying crossbody. Eaton kicked out, and the stud stable hit the ring for what was essentially a double DQ, because they went after both guys. Gibson, Lane, and Dr. Tom run in. Eaton got Cornette's racket and took people out. Killer Kyle runs in for immoral support, and that's when the Jobber crew runs in to get their asses kicked, and the show ends with mass chaos. Also, a fat security guard in a too-tight yellow shirt walked by, and I was hoping he would run in to get his ass kicked, but sadly, it did not happen.
Cornette was whacking those job guys with a tennis racket.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I always wonder, like, it's the loaded tennis racket. What was supposed to be in the tennis racket?
Oh.
I'd like to think that if I just hit you with a tennis racket, like an unloaded tennis racket, it would still hurt like a motherfucker. But
yeah, surely at some point there had to have been a reveal somewhere of what was in the tennis racket.
I don't know. Like, it's funny because like the only time I remember a reveal is when Sunny was managing Farouk, and she cost Farouk the Intercontinental title against Mark Merrow by accidentally hitting Farouk with her purse, and it turned out she had a brick in it. And I'm sure it's happened other times, and I don't know why this particular moment has stuck in my head for 30 years. That's literally the only time I remember a reveal like that.
The first time I ever saw that, weirdly, was do you remember when Chris Canyon was doing Positively Canyon, and he had DDP's book with a brick in it?
I don't remember them actually showing a brick in it, but I do remember the gimmick, and I mean, it would make sense, because otherwise, why would you get knocked out by a book? I love reading and everything, but
I actually have a copy of that book that I found at Half Price Books a few years ago.
Nice. Was it any good?
Haven't read it yet.
Okay.
Hey, if you like reading and you don't want to have reading ruined for you, don't go to grad school.
Okay, then. I mean, first I have to graduate from regular college in order to go to grad school, but I'll keep that in mind. Um, by the way, the thing that made Canyon a real heel to me wasn't him dressing, acting like DDP. It was the fact that he would damage a book like that in order to fit a brick inside. You know, that is the true heel move. So
I don't even like underlining my books.
it's funny because I'm so reverent towards books, but I abuse mine. I dog ear the corners. I bend the spine. I do all that fun shit. And sorry, not sorry.
Books are made to be used.
So that does it for Smoky Mountain Wrestling. 57 down, 143 to go. We didn't hear from Stud Stable this week, but I mean, we can only fit so many promos into 1 hour. But I would say, another good show building up, the two big feuds of the company here. The 3-team feud, and then of course the Tracy Smothers Tracy Smothers Dirty White Boy feud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've got the Tracy Smothers Dirty White Boy feud. We've got the Kevin Sullivan Brian Lee feud, and the Rock and Roll Heavenly Body Stud Stable feud.
So not the Tim Horner Nightstalker feud isn't lighting your world on fire?
I consider that a sub feud of the Kevin Sullivan Brian Lee feud.
Okay, so before we get to the what else is happening in the world of wrestling segment and the show, I want to play for you the famous Tim Horner Mr. Warndorf promo from earlier this year. And I hope I haven't oversold it. I hope that you can properly enjoy its badness here, because I think you will, because it's something here. And this may explain why Mr. Wonderful left the company like pretty much immediately. But let's go to Dutch Mantel interviewing Tim Horner from January, insert day here. I forget what the actual day is.
Okay, fans, you've seen what happened last week, and right here, standing right with me here is White Lightning Tim Horner. And Tim, I just want to say that, the way Paul Orndorff acted last week, I don't agree with it, and I think you did absolutely the right thing by coming out and doing exactly what you did.
Well, Dutch, I figured you'd see it my way. You seem to always do when we're kind of face-to-face, if you know what I mean. But let me tell you something, Mr. Paul Orndorff. You come out here and you degrade these people. You degrade everybody. You say that you're Mr. Wonderful and you've been all over the world. Well, I've been a few places myself, and most recently it was on you, if you can recall. So let me just tell you something. If you got something to say to me, Mr. Wonderful, you say it to my face. Don't say it about my family. Don't say it about my friends. And certainly don't say it about my fans. You understand what I'm saying? Now let me tell you something else, Mr. Wonderful. Thanksgiving Thunder, you interfered in my match. You cost me that title. Now we've been going around tag matches, me and Ronnie Garvin. You won't have the guts one-on-one to face me. Always got to have something to wrap around your hand or get something from Ron Ryder, the Dirty White Boy. If you want some of me, jump on me. I'll help you all I can. You understand where I'm coming from? I'm not a hard man to find. These people know I'll fight when I have to. And now it's come the time to fight, Mr. Wonderful, and that's exactly what it's going to be. If you want to fight, it's going to be a fight. Jump on me, get in my face, slap me, and get me in the mood, if you know what I'm talking about. So go ahead, get in my face, jump on me. If you get tired, I'll take over. But nevertheless, Mr. Wonderful, I'm going to get you wherever it's going to be. If it's here, if it's in the parking lot, who cares? It doesn't matter to me. Does it matter to you, Dutch?
No, sir. Doesn't matter to me where you get him, as long as you don't get me. That's it, folks. Right now, that's Down and Dirty with Dutch.
Okay, so let's say you were not a wrestling fan, and I just played you the audio of that promo and cut off the parts where it's painfully obvious they're building to a wrestling match. What would you think Tim Horner is inviting Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff to take part in?
That wasn't a promo. That was foreplay.
You know what he's saying. I hope I didn't oversell that and ruin the greatness of that promo for you.
No, that was I didn't know what to expect, and it wasn't that.
Now, I honestly believe, and I haven't really shared this with anybody with an actual opinion, so I'll see. And you may not really be able to tune to really speak because you haven't seen everything. However, I truly believe that Tim Horner is being punished by Jim Cornette for doing something exceptionally stupid. Because a week or so before this, now Horner had beaten Dirty White Boy in a match, but White Boy got his foot on the ropes, but Horner stole the title and took it with him. And so it became a running gag for a few weeks that Horner stole the title but didn't know where it was. And eventually he came out with a sick child holding the title, and babyface Commissioner Bob Armstrong had to come out and take the title belt from a sick child. And allegedly, nobody knew this was going to happen. And Armstrong was understandably pissed off about it. Cornette was pissed off about it. And in my opinion, it led to Cornette allowing Horner to look like an ass on TV for a few weeks. Because, like this, they didn't reshoot that promo. Because they didn't just, they could have reshot it backstage, or they could have shot it in front of no audience, or they could have shot it before the next taping and then edited it in cleverly into the other show. Instead, they left that in, and they left in other moments where Horner botched moves when normally they would do a long shot of the crowd when there'd be a botched move. So I've been saying that, Cornette's been leaving this stuff in on purpose as a punishment for Horner, which I think also brings down the quality of the show too, because he's allowing this, minor league stuff to the stuff that looks minor league to air on his show. But I was wondering what you thought about that.
I don't know because I haven't seen all of it, but I've definitely heard Cornette burying Tim Horner on his podcast over the years, and I think when we're done recording, I'm going to go look some of that up again.
By the way, I should note, and I forgot to mention this earlier, Horner did not own part of the company. Basically, Horner left WCW around the same time Cornette did, and Cornette had already made plans to start Smoky Mountain, but Horner had found a money mark to put $20,000 into Knoxville Wrestling.
Okay.
Yeah, and Cornette, knowing that would sour Knoxville fans when he tried to start a real promotion, he let Horner in on it and made him part of the office, and that led to a lot of fucked up Tim Horner-ness. Yeah, but we only have I say only, but yeah, we have about a year and a half left of Tim Horner, and his last real program is with the Mummy. Yes,
fantastic.
There's a mummy. Wait. There's a mummy coming, legitimately.
Tim Horner, or based on that promo against Mr. Warndorf, maybe Tim Horny.
Is that going to be our new name for Mr. Horner?
It might be.
So before we finish things up, let's tell you what else is happening this week in wrestling here on February 27th, 1993. So the big news is what we've been expecting ever since Bill Watts officially quit a few weeks ago, which is that after being demoted to working in syndication sales, Jim Ross officially resigned from WCW on February 25th. Considering his former position and his new position, nobody was shocked. It is noted he will continue to do his weekly wrestling radio show sponsored by WCW, which is important to remember in the next few weeks, and will continue being on the WCW hotline until they hire a replacement. Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair officially returned to the companies that made them famous, WWF and WCW, or the companies they're most synonymous with is more accurate. Hogan will team with Brutus Beefcake to face Money Inc. at WrestleMania, and Flair has started doing Flair for the Gold interview segments, and his first match back is scheduled to be the June Clash of the Champions, which, as we find out much later on, there is a contractual reason for that, because as part of his release from the WWF, while he could go to WCW, he wasn't allowed to wrestle for X number of days. And then the hidden, buried in the Observer this week, the other big news story, the Ultimate Warrior is suing the WWF for $5.6 million. And the majority of it is based on monies that he was never paid for shows he worked in October and early November of 92. And then, and this is where, it's one of those things you throw in a lawsuit knowing that you're not gonna get paid off for it, but you're trying to see what you can get out of this. He's also suing for anticipated monies that he would have received had he wrestled at Survivor Series 92, Royal Rumble 93, WrestleMania 9, and SummerSlam 93. So we'll see how that lawsuit goes. But I mean, personally, I'm legitimately he obviously has a claim to the money that he should have earned for the shows he did work. That goes without saying. But the rest of it, we'll see.
I can't imagine that Warrior would go off the deep end like that.
Well, if it helps, at this point, he's still Jim Hellwig.
Oh, okay. For now.
Yes. He hasn't gone crazier, we'll just say. But anywho, that's going to do things for this week's fine, fun, outstanding episode of Smoky Mountain. We made it 2 weeks, Trae. You think you'll make it a third?
I reckon.
And we said it on the Something Else show, but let the people know if they want to follow you on Twitter, where they can follow you.
It's Oregatrae, OREGATRAE. Should have come up with something that is spelled like it sounds, but there you go.
If you look up Trae, you'll get him and Trae Young. And spoiler, he is not Trae Young.
I'm Trae Old, if anything.
Well, I don't know how good or bad your basketball skills are, so maybe you could be Trae Young. I don't know.
Probably not as good as his.
Probably not, but you never know. But anywho, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Smoky Mountain. I want to thank everybody for listening. I hope you all enjoyed the show, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.